Every time I walk into somebody's living room for the first time, they always say, "Son of a gun, Forrest Gump in my living room." Elevator rides with people. "Oh, I can't believe Forrest Gump's in the same elevator as I am." Yeah, I get it. It's worthwhile. I was lucky in that I was studying theater when I was in college, university, and I got a job before I got out of college. It wasn't really a job, it was just an offer to work in classical repertory theater, in which the pay was going to be the professional experience that went along with it. And there was a group of us, we all went, and we knew we would be gone for 4 or 5 months. We knew we would have something to do with either 5 or 6 productions that were in repertory, and just the activity was enough to warrant going. I had no preconceived notions of anything. I had saved up enough money to barely survive, and something would happen. And it just so happened that the going actually was the most important aspect of it, because I went. And after I was there was one particular show that needed a bigger cast than the professionals the professional company could supply. And because I was there, and I ended up getting actually paid $50 a week, which was the difference between life and death. So I always felt as though there was something on the horizon that would come down the pike that would get me through the next few months. But as far as bona fide break goes, the only thing you can go on is your faith and your instinct, and that window of cushion that you would be able to give yourself, of enough money literally to pay your rent. I was married and I had a kid at the time, and just always needed to have. I say, well, I got $800 in the bank. I think I'm good for about another 3 months. The chops that you develop in comedy are the chops that you will not be slave to, but they will serve you in other aspects of storytelling. There is a timing to it. There is a pace. There is the supreme task of give and take with whoever else you are there for, acting with in the scene. The very first job I had, which was in Splash, was with Ron Howard. I had been doing a comedy television series and got fired from it, went off the air, and I was desperate, to be funny again, quite frankly. And the very first read-through of the script, of the screenplay, had all the actors and John Candy and Daryl Hannah and Eugene Levy, everybody was there, all the key department heads. And I was operating from the task that had been mine when I was on the TV show, which was to score, which was to kill, which was to take the lines and get laughs at the table. And I did it, like flop sweat mercilessly, trying to get laughs around this table. And it was terrible, and I didn't get any laughs, and I felt like I had failed. And Ron took me aside that day, right after that reading, and he said, "Look, I know what you're doing, because I've done things. You're trying to be funny. You're trying to score. That's not your job in this movie. Your job is to love that girl." And if he hadn't said that, he could have all said, hey, he could have fired me that day, to tell you the truth, but he had done TV, and so he knew what the things I had fallen into, so he cut me some slack. God bless the boy. I was operating on so much just instinct and energy. I would have perhaps told myself to say, if you're right now you're putting 60% energy into 40% instinct, reverse that. Make it 60% instinct and 40% energy. I was just loud. I was just fast, and I sort of like would swamp the process with just this kind of like blind, accelerated pace that was the only that's the only speed I knew how to operate. And you learn how to start examining the text in a different way when you are sure enough that you'll have the opportunity to work again. And by the time I had finished my 3rd year of that repertory company, and was in New York and was working in some other medium, I still had not learned how to operate at a slower pace of examining the text I was still just trying to say, hey, I got this part because I'm loud and I'm fast and I'm funny. I just kept throwing myself into that. So I could have learned probably a few years earlier in order to take your time and do the interior work yourself that you need to do, that you can do alone just by studying the text. Before that, I would just learn the text and then do it, as opposed to really like sort of planning out a mode of attack.
Along comes Sleepless in Seattle, which changes romantic comedy, I think. Do you think, in what way?
You said it. I don't know. I don't know. That was, that was Nora Ephron, who wrote that with her sister Delia. She landed on this concept of hearing somebody's voice on the radio. And the fact that they never see each other and they don't really know who each other are, that was the structure of a screenplay and the filmmaker. And the conversations I brought to, I was probably very cranky with Nora at the beginning of that because I kept reading and said, it's this kid, that's a kid, he's got a kid, it's a kid scene, the kid's the guy, the kid's the catalyst, it's just a kid, yeah, it's a kid's movie. And she said, no, you have to be a dad. And then I said, well, then you have to write it like a dad. Which I'm making a joke, but actually sometimes we did come down to words like that. And she says, what do you mean? I said, you're a woman, you're a mother, you're basing this on your experience with your boys. I'm a man. My relationship with my boys is nothing like this. For example, she wrote a scene where Sam was going to go off for a romantic weekend with this other woman that Jonah didn't like her, and so he didn't want it, so he was throwing a fit. And in the screenplay, Sam, the father, did not go because he didn't want to disappoint his son. That was in the screenplay. And I told Nora, I said, that is such horse shit. Let me get this straight. A man has not gotten laid in 4 years, and he's got a shot to get laid this weekend, and he's not gonna go because his son doesn't like the girl? I got news for you. That kid's going to the sitter, and I'm going off to get laid. In the beginning, I was just thrilled to know that someone was asking me to be in a movie, and I thought that was all that was required. And as long as they keep asking, everything will fall into place. And I think I had to become dissatisfied with my own process, 5 or 6 movies in, where I was feeling that I was not bringing to the work anything other than that instinct. And that's when I realized that, part of me got older. And I think even if you're as old as 29, you have a different set of chops and perspective. You have a different, believe it or not, wisdom than you did when you were 24. And I think about every 5 years, I went through some sort of process of re-examining where I was in life, as a man, as well as an actor. And thinking like, guess what, I'm 36 now, and there's a whole world of movies that I can't make anymore because I don't want to play the young man who's trying to figure out life. I want to play a man of bitter compromise. I want to play somebody who's been through something. So it's a never-ending process, I think, of examining where you are in life as a human being, and then transposing that so it's going to be reflected in your work somehow.
So Forrest Gump, who, rightly or wrongly, is nearly always one of the first film titles that is associated.
Yeah. Every time I walk into somebody's living room for the first time, they always say, son of a gun, Forrest Gump in my living room. Elevator rides with people. Oh, I can't believe Forrest Gump's in the same elevator as I am. Yeah, I get it. It's worthwhile.
So how did you settle on Forrest Gump, on the stance, the voice, the whole kind of bearing?
In casting of the young Forrest had a particular dilemma in which Bob says, what do you think we should do? And we talked about it for a while, and there were a number of, it's a hard role to cast. A lot of professional actors, a lot of professional kid actors. And we, I don't know where it came, but we realized that, Bob, you will never get a kid in order to recreate something that I come up with, theoretically. what has to happen here, I think, is you've got to cast a kid, and then I follow where that kid goes. And young Michael Humphreys came from this part of Tennessee that is literally really more of a part of whatever state is below Tennessee. What is it, Arkansas, Mississippi? I don't know. But he had this accent. He had this way of speaking that I would engage him in conversations with a tape recorder and just get this weird kind of cadence that we were together. It was in South Carolina. We were riding out to see the house that they had built, the set of the Gump house, which is not a real house. And we were just in the car, and I was saying, so Michael, what does your father do? And Michael said, my dad makes grease. And I said, how do you make grease? He said, I don't know, but they use it in lipstick and motor oil. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Well, and then he said to me, can I tell you what my favorite movie of yours is? I said, sure, what is it? Well, I like all of your films, but my favorite is Dragonette. So taking him, and everything that came out of Forrest was based on him, the way he held his hands, you know, this opposite way, and the way he just kind of had this, it all came from little Michael Humphreys.